Good evening. Today I have the lovely Abir with me. Hi, Abir. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, thank you, Donna. I'm Abir Mukherjee, and I'm the author of the Wyndham and Banerjee series of crime novels set in Raj-era India in the 1920s and 30s. There are 5 books now in the series, and there will be a 6th at some point as soon as I get my finger out. But I'm also writing other stuff. And it's great to be on. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
You're very welcome, and it's a pleasure. So my first question to everyone is, did you always know that you wanted to write?
Yeah, I always wanted to write ever since I was at school, but I had a bit of a hiatus of about 20 odd years when I didn't write anything. Yeah, I was at school and as I say, I wanted to write, but one of my English teachers told me that not to do an English degree. He said, if you do an English degree, you'll end up teaching snotty kids in a school somewhere, just like I've done teaching you. So I took that to heart. And then, so I didn't do English, I did economics at university. And then I spent 20 years doing something really, really boring in finance. And during that time, I always knew I wanted to write, and I'd get really bored with my day job to the extent that whenever things got really bad, I would do 2 things. I would buy lottery tickets and I would start writing a book. But I never won any money for a start. And secondly, I never got very far on any of these attempts. I'd write 5,000 words, and then I would read them and I'd get scared, or just, too much would be happening and I'd just put it in a drawer and I'd forget about it. And so that went on for the best part of 20 years. And then at the age of like 39 3/4, I sort of had this midlife crisis, as it were. And my wife said I wasn't allowed a motorbike. So I thought, right, I'm gonna write then. And I just got very lucky. I wrote something. I saw a competition in the Telegraph, and they were looking for new crime writers, and they only wanted 5,000 words of a novel. And as I say, I had like 5,000 words, and I sort of put it in, I tidied it up, and I sent it away, and I won. And so that was great. I might have told them that I had a full novel, but I didn't. I had about 7,000 rotten words. And so, yeah, once I explained that to them, they were very good about it. They said, okay, we'll give you a while to write it. And that became my first book, A Rising Man, which came out in 2016 when I was still semi-young. Now I'm just old.
You're not that old.
Oh, I feel it. I tell you, I feel old today. It's my birthday last week, and I've we could have set fire to the house with the number of candles that we had.
I was fine until I worked with 2 16-year-olds, and then I was like, oh God, they're like another species. I have no idea.
I used to work with a girl, and my ringtone was a Dire Straits song, and she was like half my age, and then she started singing along to the song, and I thought, oh, you know Dire Straits? I said, yeah, my dad used to play it when I was a kid. I'm like, oh, great. Yeah, that's about right. I thought I was cool for 2 seconds, and then
yeah, it's
brought it down
depressing.
to earth.
Yeah, I know. I was driving home and I heard the drum and bass version of Down Under by Men at Work, and I was just like, oh my God, what?
You're too young to remember Men at Work the first time around. I don't believe you remember it from when it came out. I do, you don't.
The reason I know it is because it was Simon Whitlock's walk-on song on the Darts. So that's how I know it.
Okay, that's later on. I was there when it came out. Young lady.
Yeah, I was not quite. I don't know when it came out, actually. I've no idea.
It was I'm going to say 1982. It's going to be between 81 and 83 is my rough guess. I'll find out. Alexa, when did Men at Work release? What's it called? Land Down Under.
Men at Work first premiered in the United States on the 24th of May 2012.
No, that's the wrong thing. Alexa, off. No, she's telling me something else. She's useless.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, I was born in 83, so yeah, I wouldn't have known it, but yeah. Anyway, we digressed already. That's impressive. Books. We're here for books.
Well, we're here for culture. We're here for things like, Land Down Under.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many better songs from the 80s than that though. It's okay, but
Absolutely,
yeah.
'cause, it's a well-known fact that music peaked in 1986. It's been downhill since then. No, not many people admit that, but it is true. If you look at the number one hits of 1986, it was almost every song is brilliant. After that, it just goes downhill. And in the 90s, it just got scary.
I know, that's when I was a teenager. This is what I was brought up on, is the songs of the 90s. Oh my God. Yeah, there's no hope. Spice Girls and Barbie
To be fair, I
Girl
was
and God
clubbing in the
knows.
90s. So yeah, I was very drunk for most of the 90s.
The only way. Yeah. It was bad. When you wrote your first book, did you know that it was going to develop into a series?
I knew I wanted to write a series. In fact, when I handed in that first 5,000 words, I had to write a 2-page synopsis as well. And the last line of that was, if this is of interest, it would be the first in a series running between 1919, which is when the first book is set, to 1947, which is Indian independence. So I always knew I wanted to look at the whole period, but I'd envisaged doing like a book a year. But I forgot that that's 38, 39 years, 39 books. And I probably won't live that long because I'm from Glasgow. So, maybe I've bitten off a bit too much, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
You could do 2 a year.
I can't even manage.
Some people, they write like 4 books a year. So
yeah, but they're good and they're efficient. I'm just lazy and not very talented. And if I get 1 book out a year, I'm doing well. But I also want to write other stuff. So I'm currently writing something which is very different from the series. It's actually set in 2024 in the lead up to the next US election. So yeah, I'm working on the second draft of that now, and it's bizarre. It's like going back to stage 1 again. It's like going back to writing that first book in terms of the learning curve. But I've talked to other authors. I've talked to people like Val McDermid and Mick Herron, and they all say, yeah, when you go from writing a series to writing your first standalone, it is quite a challenge. It's not what you expect. But it's great. It's great fun. I'm learning, and that's important.
Yeah. And I guess you had to do a lot of research for your series. So what's the most interesting thing you found when researching?
Oh, there's so much. I'm very lucky in that, my books are set in India. They're set mainly in Calcutta, which is this. I don't know if your listeners or your viewers have been there, but it's this fascinating city in the east of India that was once the capital of the Raj. And it's full of these old, crumbling palaces and beautiful buildings. And there's so much history and culture there that people have just forgotten, or people in Britain have forgotten. So it's a great atmospheric place to work. And there's so much history. So, this was one of the most interesting things that I learned, was that the science of fingerprinting was actually developed in Calcutta. So the Calcutta Police Department had a fingerprint bureau 5 years before Scotland Yard did. And the actual work was done by 2 Indians. One was a Hindu and one was a Muslim. They were called Hemchandra Bose and Aziz ul Haq. So they're the ones who did the work, but the guy who gets the credit was their boss, an Englishman called Edward Henry, who was given a knighthood for it and then became head of Scotland Yard, and it's still called the Henry system to this day. So yeah, that's one of the most interesting things. But there's so much history and so much sort of crime-related stuff that's been forgotten in that part of the world, that it's a joy every time I go. Little nuggets just come up. I was doing a walking tour of Calcutta, and we'd just gone past the High Court into this really rundown street, and it was called Fancy Street. And I'm like, well, why is it called Fancy Street? And the guy goes, well, because it's really not very fancy. And he goes, well, actually, it's from the Bengali word fashi, which means to strangle, because this is where they were hanged. So it was actually Hanging Street. But because the word was fashi, it got translated into Fancy Street. And it's little things like that make me laugh. It's quite gruesome, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I think fingerprint was invented as like a contract thing, wasn't it? If people borrowed money and
Well,
not
exactly,
for
because
crime, it was for as a
so few people were literate in that part of the world. Fingerprints were how you signed things. So they had even they had this great database of fingerprints from which to work on, and that's how they developed it, and that's why it developed there rather than somewhere else. Because for generations, the fingerprint was how you had signed documents. So you had this great collection of and this archive of fingerprint material which you could use.
Really hard to compare they are as well.
Yeah, can you imagine? Gosh.
Yeah.
Sitting there with magnifying glasses out, try to see
Yeah.
the difference.
I know they're all different and everything, which is all very nice, but there's only certain little.
Who's this? Who's this? Donna?
This is Trixie.
Trixie, and Trixie's what kind of a dog is she?
She's a Yorkshire Terrier. She's a rescue. We've only had her maybe 2 months.
Oh wow! And how's that going?
Yeah, as you can see, she's hating her life here and doesn't get any attention at all, and doesn't make sure that she gets on in all my interviews now.
Well, there you are. She's a star. She has
Yeah.
to be in.
Yeah, she's a baby. So these her ears, I love. Cold, cold. If you were to take one of your characters out for a meal, who would you choose and what would you ask them?
That's one of my characters.
Yeah.
I think, you know what? I'd love to take them all out separately, but I think let's start. I wouldn't want to take Sam or Surin. My two main characters, Sam Wyndham and Surendranath Banerjee. I probably wouldn't want to take either of them out because it'd be quite awkward. So Sam would be like, why have you done this to me? Why have you given me such a terrible wife? And I've killed his wife. I've given him this opium addiction. I've dragged him across the world. He'd be like, why do you hate me? And Surin would be like, why do you keep putting me in difficult positions where I keep getting beaten up? So I don't think I would take either of them. I'd probably start with Annie Grant, who is this Anglo-Indian woman that Sam has a bit of a thing for. He does fall in love with her, but then he accuses her of murder at one point, which is not very sort of conducive to a long-term relationship. But, since then, he's been basically carrying out this low-level guerrilla warfare against anybody else who might be interested in her. So I would take her out for dinner and see how Sam reacts.
That seems like a very risky move. Do you hide secret jokes or messages in your books that only a few people would understand?
I do. Well, do I hide secrets that only a few people understand? No, I don't do that. What I do is I put in jokes that my readers will know and people who know me will know in terms of, so I'm always making fun of accountants because I spent 25 years being an accountant. So there's a lot of digs at accountants. There's a lot of digs at Scottish people, and there's a lot of digs at Bengali people. So Bengal is the part of India where the books are set. So yeah, there's not. So I don't tend to make jokes that only one or two people would get. I don't see the point of that. But I do. If people know me. And they know I'm an accountant, or I was an accountant, then they'll understand why I make so many jokes at the expense of accounting, and why I kill so many accountants as well. They tend to have a short lifespan in my books. What I do though is I name a lot of my characters after my friends. So from book 2, at the back of every book, I have to apologize for about half a dozen people for killing them or doing things to them. But yeah, people seem to like being killed. I ask people, do you want to be a hero, or do you want to be a villain, or do you want to be a victim? And most people want to be either a villain or a victim. It's quite odd. Maybe that's just my friends. I don't know.
I think I'm in 3 books now. Oh, wow. The first one, I was a sex mad politician who got struck off for taking 3 guys to her hotel room, which was quite funny. And I had no idea.
These days with that. In standards of slipping, you'd be in the cabinet with that sort of background.
Yeah,
right?
I know. What was the other one? The last one, I'm a policewoman. I can't remember what the second one is, but it's something to do with sex again. And so, selling my body for sex because I was in debt. That's right.
I see a pattern emerging here, don't I?
I swear it's not me. I promise.
Mike Craven, M.W. Craven, said he was going to put me in one of his books. I don't know if he's done it yet. I haven't read his latest one yet, so I don't know if I'm in it. I need to check. Maybe he just told me that just to make me read it. I'll have to see.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him.
If I'm not, I'm going to give him a terrible review.
Yeah, he'd be too drunk to remember anyway.
You know what? He's such a good guy, though. We because of lockdown, we didn't go abroad this year. We just went to the Lake District for our summer holidays. So I asked him, should we stay in this town or that town? And because we were booking last minute, and my wife found this one place that looked really cheap. Because don't stay there. It's probably a crack house. You sure? He said, yeah. I was like, okay, fine. And we took his recommendation. We stayed in Ulverston, which was really nice. So yeah. Mike is lovely, and his wife is even lovelier. She's far too good for him. So if you ever see him, tell him I said that.
I will. Oh, he's promised me another interview when his new book comes out. So yeah, I shall.
Tell him two things. Tell him his wife is too good for him. Tell him he looks really tired and that he should stop writing for a while so everybody else can get a chance. Okay, just pass those. Don't tell him that's from me. You just tell him that yourself. Oh,
I tell him anyway. I tell him that he's cool making us wait for his books. And he's like, it's not me, it's the publisher. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Just release him. But yeah, apparently you have to be patient.
Well, there you are. Yeah, got to be patient.
Yeah, I'm not, especially when they're as good as his. I always tell him it's a compliment, but he just tells me to shut up, really. So just fair enough.
He is a fantastic writer. It hurts me to say that. I'm a bit jealous about how good a writer he is, but he's fantastic. And he's a lovely guy.
Yeah, even if he looks miserable.
Yes.
If you were to fictionally murder someone, how would you do it?
Oh, fictionally murder someone. That's a good question. Now, so I don't really know how I would do that, but put it this way, right? My wife will not go on a cruise with me. Ever since I told her that the best way to kill someone is to push them off a cruise ship, because it's on the high seas. It's difficult to find the body. If you can't find the body, it's difficult to prove the crime. And even if you do find the body, the crime is investigated by the country to which the ship is registered, if it happens on the high seas. And most of these are sort of registered in the Dutch Antilles or somewhere where the police department is one man and a dog. So yeah, I said to my wife, we should go on a cruise just for research, and she won't do it. So I think somebody else told me though that it's getting more difficult to do that because they have heat sensors, or they have so many cameras on these cruise ships now, or sensors on these cruise ships, that it's very difficult to push someone off without people realizing. So yeah, I'd need to do something to the surveillance system first, and then push someone off a boat. I think that's the best way to do it, because getting away with it, it's not dirty, it's clean, it's over in a couple of seconds, and you don't have to clean up, and it's pretty effective. So yeah, pushing someone off on a cruise. But as I say, my wife will not let me research that with her. So
it's full sport, honestly.
Saving me some money, to be fair. and the chance of getting COVID for the 10th time.
Yeah, that's true. Oh yeah. And if you were fictionally murdered, who would you want to investigate it?
Oh, that's a great question. If I was fictionally murdered, well, it depends. It really depends on how much I would like the crime to be solved. Because I think if I'm going to get murdered, it's probably going to be my wife. And I don't really think she should go to jail for it, because I think I'd probably deserve it if she murdered me. So I'd want somebody completely incompetent to investigate if it was my wife. So we'd go with somebody like Inspector Clouseau if it was my wife who did it. If it was someone who I didn't like, if it's someone who's, a real, if it was, Wasim Khan or somebody like that, I'd want Poirot to investigate, because Wasim thinks he's an intellectual, but he's nothing compared to Poirot. So Poirot would he'd solve it in a day. So yeah, let's go with that.
What was your most fun scene that you wrote in any of your books, obviously without spoilers?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a really good question. I've never thought of that. Fun scene. I don't know if I have a favorite scene. I do have favorite lines. So there's a scene in the first book where Sam and Surin are investigating the murder of an Englishman. I know he's a Scotsman, I should say, not an Englishman. And they end up at this church in Calcutta, the church, the St. Andrew's Church. And the minister is from Scotland, and he's trying to convert them. He's trying to get Sam to join the church. And despite being, thousands of miles away from Scotland, and despite the fact that one of his friends is dead, the thing that matters most to him is this rivalry between Catholics and Protestants. And he's trying to convert Surendranath to Protestantism, knowing full well that if a Hindu was going to convert, he'd probably convert to Catholicism anyway, because they've got much more, pomp and ceremony. So that was one of my favorite scenes, because it's having a dig at the background that I come from, this sort of, are you a Catholic Hindu or a Protestant Hindu, that sort of background, So that's one of my favorite scenes. Also, killing my friends is always good. Whenever I'm killing somebody who's a mate of mine, that makes me smile. So those would be my favorites. I think things where there are jokes, or where I'm gruesomely killing somebody I know.
That's hilarious. I can just see you sitting there chuckling as you're typing away.
That's why I got into this business. It's basically therapy for me. I just take out all my anger issues on my my friends who are imaginary characters, as opposed to my imaginary friends. That's a completely different kettle of fish.
Yeah, nothing would surprise me with you authors. You're a weird breed, I've discovered.
Oh, lovely. Oh, there we go. You might have to get murdered in one of my books now, darling.
That's fine, you carry on. As long as it wasn't sex related, that's fine.
Well, yes. Otherwise, too much of that happening in your life right now.
Yeah, fictionally only. What was I just going to ask you?
Lost your trail of thought. You're thinking about sex now. Gosh, Donna, this is just gone off the rails.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why that would be. You're distracted. When you're editing, what's your most overused word or phrase?
Well, you see, I didn't realize I did this, but my first editor pointed out that I used the word suddenly an awful lot. And now whenever I write suddenly, I think every single time when I write suddenly, I think of my first editor, and then I score half of it out, and then I can't think of a better word, and I just write it in again. So suddenly is the word that I apparently overuse, but there are phrases as well. There's also the wee gestures that you have to put in to break up conversations. So the nodding, nodded, or the shake of the head, shook his head, or all that. But the word for me apparently is suddenly, that I use too much. He said suddenly.
I love that every author knows their word. They know it just like that off the top of their heads, always. What was your favourite first as an author?
Gosh, that's a good question. You know what? There were so many things that stand out. Whether it was going to my first Harrogate, being on Val McDermid's New Blood panel, meeting Val. That's a funny story, because I didn't know what to say, and I ended up inviting her home to dinner, and she said yes. So I had to tell my wife, Val McDermid's coming to dinner. And my wife got scared. And so instead of inviting her home, we invited her to my mum's house in Scotland. And so mum was actually going to Blackpool that day. We didn't know this. So mum did all the cooking in the morning, then went away, came back drunk about an hour before Val turned up. Val and her partner Joe turned up. And my mum's wearing her Kiss Me Quick hat from Blackpool in a sari. And she's, so when's Val Dunican coming? It's not Val Dunican. So that'd be one of them. That would be one of the things. But really, if you're talking about special things, it's probably being invited back to school for prize giving. because I never thought they would invite me back. There must be teachers turning in their graves, if they're thinking, what? So that was really quite special, going back to school after about, gosh, the best part of a quarter of a century, if not more, and standing there and talking to all these kids and all these parents and saying, look, if I can make it, anyone can. So, but that was really special. That was really nice. But there've been so many, the first interview on the radio, the first review in a newspaper, the first review by a blogger. All of these are, I'll tell you what I regret. I regret not enjoying the moment more. Because it all happened at once, and it's easy to get blasé, and it's easy to think this is what it's going to be like all the time. But it's not, because you're a debut, and you get a lot of publicity, which you don't get for the second book or the third book. But if you survive that, then the chances are it comes back. And I've been very lucky in that. We've been through the cycle. The books have actually done really well. People have taken them to their hearts. But yeah, I regret not enjoying and savoring the moments more. And I regret, my father passed away before the first book came out. He knew it was coming, but he didn't live to see it come out. And I wish he had. So I've got more regrets than I have sort of, memories, I suppose.
And I know this is a silly question because I already know the answer, but have you made lots of author friends since you started writing?
No, I hate them all. No.
Well, it sounds like you've killed a fair few of them all.
Do you know what? It's funny, and people say this, but the crime writing fraternity is just the most wonderful, welcoming, helpful, open bunch of people you'll meet, and it's really quite a shock, because I understand that not all types or genres of authors are like that. I mean, literary authors have a reputation for being very bitchy. Romantic fiction authors apparently will scratch your eyes out, before they'll even give you a good word. But crime fiction authors, from the very top, people like Ian Rankin, Lee Child, Val McDermid, all the way down, they'll make time for you. They'll give you advice when you're a nobody. And that sort of permeates through the whole community. It's so collegiate, so helpful. There's none of this, if somebody else does well, then that means I don't do well. It's not a zero-sum game. It's a question of pulling everybody up, and helping to keep the door open for other people. And that's great. It's actually really, really nice, especially coming from, an industry like finance, which can be quite cutthroat at times, to come to an industry where basically everybody's very friendly and very drunk 90% of the time. It's great. I love it. And you will see that I've had to move most of my books to make space for my alcohol, like a proper writer. So there you are.
Yeah, I was talking to someone earlier that isn't brave enough to go to Harrogate, and she said, I guess everyone's drunk. I'm like, honestly, I said, everyone's shy and everyone's all sticks in their little groups, and then the alcohol comes out and that's it, everyone's fine. Yeah. So she's like, I may brave it then. I was like, you have to, it's great.
It's fantastic. And this year was quite special because it was the first, I think it was the first festival, not just Harrogate, it was the first literary festival I went to after, 18 months of lockdown. And everyone was a wee bit worried for the first hour, and then everyone got drunk. But no one seems to have got ill, which was great. Well, nobody I know got ill because we were all worried about it. But it was so nice. It was so nice being able to socialize and see people again. So it was very special.
Yeah, it was my first ever literary festival, and I loved it. Right. Absolutely loved every second. And I got home, and then within about 3 hours, I booked my hotel for this year. I might go back. Yeah, so
I haven't booked anything. I have to get online. I think I'm all right. I think I'm invited to host a panel, so I should have a hotel room somewhere or a bed for the night. I'll be all right.
You should probably check though, just to be safe.
I'll do it. I'm just going to wing it, just like you're doing with your exams.
Or get your wife to do it. That's what their wives are for.
Then we'll have to get Cluzo to investigate why I'm dead.
Oh. If you were able to spend a day with any author, dead or alive, who would you like to spend a day with?
That's a good question. Oh gosh, there's so many. Who would I like to spend the day? Who would, you see, any answer I give you will be the wrong one because there'll be another 10 that I'd want to spend it with. Let's go with Agatha Christie because I'm such a big Poirot fan. And I'd have to ask her where all the ethnic minority characters are in her book. But yeah, I think that would be a learning experience for both of us. So yes, I'll go with Agatha Christie.
You'd be a very busy lady. There's a very popular choice.
Who else do people choose?
What's his name? A few that have died recently. Stephen King, obviously.
We had him
fantasy guy
last year. We had him at.
Yeah, I saw him.
Yeah.
Comparing toilet stories with Linwood Barclay.
Yes, that was interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I tell you who else would be really interesting. I think George Orwell. So with Arthur Blair, I can't remember. Eric Blair. So yeah, I would like to. I'd love to spend some time with him because 1984 is still my favorite book of all time. So, but yeah, Agatha Christie and George Orwell and me having dinner. Who's paying, by the way? Would it be me paying?
Well,
yeah, it'll be
well, you're spending the day, so you don't necessarily have to.
That's all right. I'll take them to KFC. It'll be fine. Don't worry.
Yeah, and that would be a nice treat for them, I guess.
I doubt either of them will have ever had KFC, so it might be. You know what? Might work out quite well.
Yeah, fried chicken, fab. They're proper upper class.
Yeah, none of the chicken cottage type stuff. Proper KFC. So yeah, pushing the boat out, be okay.
If you're able to travel to any period of time, either forwards or backwards, where would you go?
Oh, good question. Good question. I would want to travel back to the period that I write about. I think that would be really interesting. I would like to see India in the 20s and 30s and 40s. Going forward is really scary, isn't it? If you see what a mess we're making of things now. Yeah, let's go forward as well. Let's go to the year 22. Let's go forward 200 years just to see if anybody's left. And if so, are we doing really well, or are we sort of scraping by, or what's the state of the planet? I'm an optimist. I think despite ourselves, we will improve. We always do, other than the Dark Ages, which was just dark in Europe. But yeah, I'm an optimist. Let's go at 22. Let's see what it's like.
You go, no way. I'm not an optimist at all. I just don't think there'll be anything, or robots would have taken over, which is terrifying.
No, but robots are useless. I try and get my phone to pair with my computer, and it takes like 3 hours. So no, maybe that's me that's useless. I like to think it's the technology. But
yeah, or asking Alexa a question and she just answers.
Well, exactly. You're going to upset her now. She's listening. Gotta be careful.
I know. I've got one in the room with me as well. I better not say the name too much, but she'll be like, "What?"
Alexa, can we disconnect you?
As a noun, disconnect can mean an unbridgeable disparity.
Oh, she's not answering the question. Alexa, off. Yeah, she's not. You can't do that, Dave. Sorry, Dave. Yeah.
I'll just switch myself back on. So when you're not writing, how do you like to spend your time?
Gosh, when I'm not writing, do you know what? There's not enough time in the day, so I feel guilty. I don't spend enough time with my family. I don't spend enough time with my wife and my kids. So when I'm not writing, I'll be with them, or I'll be exercising. I'll be in the gym, but I'm not in the gym anymore. So I'll be doing exercise. I'll be on the bike or doing whatever. But most of the time these days is with the family, because there just isn't time for them. I think a lot of people would be in the similar sort of position.
What's the strangest or funniest place you've ever woken up?
Oh, that I can talk about. The strange. Oh yeah, this is a good story. So We were out in a forest in the middle of India, and this was me and Graham McCrae Burnett, who wrote, he was nominated for the Booker Prize for, I forgot the name of the book now, you know what it's called, His Bloody Project. There you are. So we were out in the middle of this forest, and we were staying in these little huts. And so we woke up in the morning and our huts were next to each other. And Graham wouldn't come outside because there was one guy who was like playing a one-stringed instrument outside his door, and he wouldn't leave till Graham gave him money. And Graham wouldn't come out. And he was in there, and he was a wee guy, right, with this little thing. It was like a one-string violin. And he was playing really badly for about 40 minutes. And Graham McCrae Burnett, Booker nominee, just wouldn't come out of his room till I had to shoo the guy away and let Graham out of his room. So that would be one of them. And the night before, Graham tried to impress these tribal people with his music, because we went to this dinner and these tribal people were doing all their folk dances and stuff. And then Graham got his phone out and I think he played them. I can't remember what it was. I want to say it was Take That he played them, which went down really well, actually, in a forest in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, so I think my Indian trip with Graham and Auntie Val was there too, but she didn't come to the jungle with us. She stayed in Calcutta that time. But yeah, that was weird. Waking up in a forest in a hut and Graham not being able to leave his room because he was scared of somebody. That will do.
I'm sure he'll really appreciate that being shared as well.
Oh, do you know what? I tell everyone this. He may be extremely talented and a fantastic author, but he's. Oh, the other thing on that trip was I turned up a day late, and by that point, some guide had already fleeced Graham about 5,000 rupees for a 50 rupee journey. So yeah. So he wouldn't even be back if it wasn't for me. So he knows that.
Yeah, that's good. And one of my other favourite silly questions is, who is your first celebrity crush?
Oh, first celebrity crush. That's a good question, isn't it? I'm going to show my age now. It's probably ABBA, the girls from ABBA. That's probably, yeah, going back, yeah. I can't remember which one, Agnetha or the other. I can't even remember the names, but yeah, probably all of ABBA. Yes.
Well, you made me relieved to know that I don't have.
No, wait a minute. Wait. Who was your first celebrity crush? You're not getting
I don't remember either, and
No.
I always say Jason Donovan because that was my kind of era, and it was Kylie and Jason in Neighbours and their marriage, and all the songs and stuff. So I assume, but
I always feel that the world would be a better place if they did actually get married in real life.
Yeah,
that would work. And also Jennifer Aniston and Ross. Who plays Ross?
David Schwimmer.
Yeah. Although that looks like it might be on the cards. So
yeah, they really had a crush on each other, didn't they? So
yeah. So I think the world would be a better place if those two couples got married.
I agree. Yes. And Emma Watson and Tom Felton from Harry Potter as well, because they just love each other anyway. So why not just go the whole hog? Draco.
Oh, really? Oh, you see, I was thinking of Rupert Grint there. How does that work? How does Emma Watson and Draco? No, that's wrong. You're turning it on its head now. That's Trumpian talk. That's just wrong.
Harry Potter reunion, you'll see.
Okay,
they love each other. They genuinely, and it's so cute.
Is that right? Well, I'll have to. My wee boy is reading. Well, he's having Harry Potter read to him for the first time now. He's 7, so my wife is reading the first book to him. And they're in chapter 1. She's a wee bit scared that he might still be a bit too young for it because Harry loses his parents and there's a lot of bad things going on in the first chapter. But I'm saying get through that and it gets better. So
yeah, the first one. Crossed. The first 2 or 3 are pretty tame, aren't they? Then after 4, it gets dark.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. And number 7's basically just half of it's just about camping. Especially that film, the 2 films. The first film's just camping trip for most of it, isn't it? But yeah.
And then the second film is just a battle, and loads of people.
Number 3 was the best one for me.
See, I'm number 4. Number 4 for me.
Is that the Goblet of Fire? Is that?
Yeah. Where it's sort of half,
choice.
you know, the games and Quidditch and stuff, and then it turns dark and Voldemort comes back. Yeah, that's my favourite.
Don't say the name.
He's not. He's dead.
Alexa will get upset.
He died.
No,
it's fine.
Quiet. Alexa off. Alexa off. He's upset, man.
You'll get loads of adverts for Harry Potter stuff now as well.
That's right. Oh dear.
I want to go back on the studio tour, but it's so expensive.
Well, everything's expensive. I nearly had a heart attack when I saw how much it cost to go to Legoland. I mean, that's ridiculous. I love my kids, but not that much.
Oh, yeah. I only went because I got free tickets, but then I'm a wuss anyway, so I don't like rides, so I wasn't bothered. I like the little mini, like whatever it's called, model village thing. That was my favourite thing of Legoland.
Cool.
But anyway, unless you think there's anything I haven't asked you that you'd like to tell us, then I shall.
No, I think you've asked a lot of questions I've never been asked before, and I'm a bit scared now what I've said about ABBA and other people. And but no, thank you so much for interviewing me. It's been great fun. And I hope you'll edit this wisely so that I don't look like a complete idiot.
I do not edit ever.
Oh well then. Well, thank you so much, Donna.
So just before we go, would you like to remind everyone where they can find out more about you and where they can get your books?
Yeah, sure. You can find out more about me on my website, which is abirmukherjee.com. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Radio Mukhers. That's RADIOMUKHERS. And you can find my books on Amazon or in Waterstones or in all good bookshops across the country and in many other countries. Thank you very much. And I hope you do enjoy the books.